If someone told me I'd get a second chance at life on the day of the most important exam of my existence, I would have laughed. Or cried. Or maybe both. But there I was staring at the blinding white lights of the examination hall, a cold bead of sweat rolling down my temple, my hands gripping a pen I hadn't held in years. It was happening again. The college entrance exam. My name is Aria Lynn, and the last time I sat for this test, I didn't just ace it, I got used for it. Used, lied to, discarded like I was nothing more than a stepping stone. And the worst part, I let it happen. Zayden, my so-called boyfriend, the charming senior who called me his genius girl, who made me believe he loved me, when all he ever wanted was my answers, my reputation, my hard work, so he could climb higher and look good beside his actual girlfriend, the glamorous, rich heiress Bianca. In my last life, I gave everything. This time, I'll take it all back. I blinked hard, pushing away the sting of betrayal. The invigilator's voice cut through the air. Begin. It had started, but I wasn't the same girl anymore. In my previous life, I was too naive, too eager to please. I believed helping others, especially the man I loved, would bring me happiness. I didn't realize that some people only see you as a ladder, and once they've climbed over you, they don't look back. But this time, my eyes are wide open. I filled in the answer sheet with speed and clarity, memories of the paper etched into my soul. Questions that took others 5 minutes took me 30 seconds. I remembered this exam. Every question, every curveball. I was reborn for a reason, and I wasn't wasting it. When the last bell rang, I handed in my paper calmly and stood up. Around me, tired faces showed defeat, but not mine. Outside the hall, I felt his presence before I saw him. Arya. Needham's voice was the same. Smooth, confident, poisoned honey. I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. He had that crooked grin I used to melt over. You did amazing, didn't you? He said, brushing his fingers through his styled hair. I saw how focused you were. You're incredible, you know that. I smiled politely. Thanks. He blinked. No blush, no giggle, no clingy. Do you really think so? Like before. He wasn't used to this version of me. I was wondering if you could help me with the prep for next week's interview, he added casually. You've got a talent for this stuff. There it was. The beginning of the manipulation. I could have laughed. I tilted my head. I'll think about it. And walked away. That was the first time I shocked him. There would be many more. The strangest part about rebirth isn't the confusion. It's the clarity. Suddenly, everything is familiar but sharper, clearer. I could see the lies before they even left his lips. I could sense the manipulation before it was dressed in flattery. I wasn't heartbroken this time. I was ready. After walking away from Zayden, I headed straight home. I didn't look back, though I knew he stood there watching, confused by my cold shoulder. Back in my small apartment, the same faded couch greeted me. The fridge still hummed with that irritating buzz, but everything felt different. The past hadn't changed, but I had. I pulled out my old notebooks, the ones I remembered, poring over in my last life. This time, I wouldn't just memorize, I'd understand. I had a plan, not just to ace the next round of tests, but to finally live for myself. No more giving away answers. No more being the shadow behind someone else's spotlight. The next week was a blur of preparation, planning, and focus. I studied with a sharpness I hadn't felt before. I wasn't just surviving, I was building a future. At school, people started noticing. Arya, you're glowing lately. Mia, a girl I barely spoke to before, said as we passed in the hallway. I smiled. Thanks. Just taking things seriously this time. And then there was Liam. In my past life, I'd barely noticed him. He sat at the back of class, glasses always sliding down his nose, fingers constantly tapping at a worn-out laptop. He wasn't flashy like Zayden. He wasn't the type to flirt or brag, but he was kind, brilliant. And in my past life, when I hit rock bottom, he was the one who silently left a thermos of soup on my desk when I cried alone in the library. I never thanked him. I never even looked his way. This time, I did. It started simple, just a nod in class, then a shared glance over a difficult question, then a quiet exchange of notes. He never pressured, never pried, and yet his presence was grounding, like a lighthouse. Meanwhile, Zayden was growing agitated. He sent messages I didn't respond to. Hey, are you okay? I feel like you're avoiding me. Need help with your essay? I've got a few tricks. Let's hang out like old times. Old times. What a joke. I left his messages on read. My silence, once desperation, was now power, and power was addictive. But I wasn't just here to get revenge. I was here to rebuild, to rewrite, to rise. One afternoon, as I worked in the quiet corner of the campus library, Liam sat across from me. I heard you shut down Zayden in the hallway today, he said with a small smirk. I raised an eyebrow. Word travels fast, he chuckled, especially when someone as popular as him gets ignored. I shrugged. I don't owe him anything anymore. Liam looked at me, then not with pity, not with curiosity, but with something deeper. Respect. You're different now, he said. I guess I finally know who I am, I replied. That was the first time someone had ever said that with admiration in their voice, not surprise, not confusion, admiration. Later that day, I caught Zayden watching us. His jaw was tight, his phone clutched a little too hard. I wasn't playing games. I wasn't trying to make him jealous. But if it stung him to see me move on, good, he deserved to feel the sting of what he lost. It's strange how betrayal echoes. Even in this new life, this second chance, I could still feel the tremors of pain. The memories would sneak up on me when I least expected it. A certain smell, a word, a look. And each time, I reminded myself, I'm not her anymore. I was no longer the girl who would stay up till AM writing essays for someone else's success. No longer the fool who believed that love meant sacrificing my dreams. No longer blind to the whispers, the secrets, the cruel smiles behind closed doors. I was reborn, and I was watching them now with clear eyes. Zayden and Bianca, they still thought they were playing the same game, that I was the same pawn. Bianca hadn't changed a bit. Her long nails, designer bags, and sugary tone when she approached me still reeked of fake sweetness. Arya, sweetie, she said one morning, walking up to me in the cafeteria, her phone in one manicured hand, her fake concern plastered on like foundation. I heard you've been a little cold lately. Everything okay? I sipped my tea slowly, meeting her eyes with a calmness that unnerved her. I'm doing great, I said, cool and even, finally focusing on what matters. Oh, good, she chirped, her smile faltering slightly. You've always been the helpful type. I hope you won't forget who your friends are when you start climbing too high. I let that hang in the air before replying. You're right. That's why I'm very careful about who I call a friend now. She blinked, then laughed awkwardly. Right, of course. She left, stiffly walking away in her high heels. I could feel her frustration. She was used to controlling the narrative. I had just burned her script. Zayden showed up not long after. "Arya," he said, cutting me off between classes, eyes intense. "Can we talk?" "No, please. Just a minute. I don't know what happened. We used to be close. You helped me so much and now you won't even look at me." I stared at him, not because I was moved, but because, in a way, I pitied him. He really thought I owed him something. "Exactly. I used to help you," I said. "You used me." "Used? You? No, Arya. You're getting it wrong. Bianca was just going through stuff. I didn't know how to tell you." "Then let me help you out," I said, stepping closer. "You lied. You cheated. You took my work, gave it to your real girlfriend, and then acted like I was crazy when I started to ask questions." He flinched. "That's not fair, but it's true," I cut in. "And here's something else that's true. I don't care anymore." He looked stunned. "I'm not angry," I continued. "I'm not broken. I'm not here to win you back or make you suffer. I'm here to win back me. And I already have." I turned and walked away. Not just from him, but from the version of myself that once clung to him like air. That night, as I sat by the window, the soft breeze pulling at my curtains, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since I came back. It was over. The chapter, the pain, the illusion. Now I could write my own story. A knock on my door startled me. I opened it and found Liam holding a steaming cup. "Thought you could use some chamomile," he said, shyly. I smiled, truly, and let him in. Liam sat on the floor, cross-legged, while I curled up beside my desk with the cup of chamomile tea he'd brought. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was peaceful, like two pages of the same book resting side by side. "You've changed," he said, not accusingly, but like he was observing a fact with curiosity. Not in a bad way. Just, "You seem like you know exactly who you are now." I took a slow sip of tea, watching the steam spiral into the night. Maybe I finally stopped being who everyone wanted me to be, I said quietly, and started being who I needed to be. He nodded, eyes thoughtful. "You're not afraid anymore?" I smiled. "No, I'm finally free." From that night on, Liam and I started spending more time together. Not out of romance yet, but out of understanding. We'd sit and study in the campus library until it closed. We'd share notes, challenge each other with mock quizzes, and sometimes just sit quietly, enjoying each other's company. He respected boundaries. He never asked why I'd been crying in class last semester. He never brought up Zayden or the rumors. He just showed up, and that meant more than all the sweet words Zayden had ever spoken. One afternoon, our professor announced an upcoming national innovation contest, one where students could pitch a socially impactful project. The winners would get a full scholarship and a prestigious internship placement. My ears perked up. This was it. My opportunity. Liam nudged me. "We should do this together." I raised an eyebrow. "You want to partner with me?" He chuckled. "You've got the strategy. I've got the tech. We'd be unstoppable." I felt something stir in my chest, a flutter I hadn't expected. "Let's do it." We worked late into the night for weeks, pouring our hearts into the project. It was a mobile learning platform tailored for underprivileged students who couldn't afford private tutoring or stable internet. Simple, intuitive, and revolutionary. And while we worked, something between us began to shift. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a glance that lasted a second longer. A brush of fingers when we passed the laptop. A soft laugh shared in the middle of stress. But I didn't rush. I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't searching for love. I was building my future, and if love grew along the way, I would let it. One evening, while walking me back to my apartment after a long day of coding, Liam paused. "Arya," he said, "you don't have to answer this now. But I want you to know, I really admire who you are. Not just how smart you are, or how driven, but how you see things. How you keep going." I stopped walking. The street lamps cast a soft glow in his face, and in his eyes, there was no demand, only sincerity. I smiled, my voice barely a whisper. "I admire you too, Liam, more than you know." And in that moment, something old broke inside me and something new began. But the past wasn't finished with me yet. The past has sharp claws. Just when you think you've escaped, it drags its way back in, especially when the people you've left behind can't accept they've lost their grip on you. Word of our project spread across campus faster than wildfire. Professors were praising it in lectures. Students were whispering our names. The girl who once lived in the shadows was now standing in the spotlight on her own terms. And Zayden, he hated it. T first, he pretended to be indifferent, then confused, then concerned. But when none of that worked, the jealousy bled through. One evening, as I left the innovation lab, I found him waiting for me near the steps. "Arya," he called, his voice too sweet to be sincere. I stopped, wary. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, arms crossed. "You're acting like you don't even know me anymore." "I don't," I said, stepping past him. "I made mistakes, okay? But I cared about you. Still do." That word cared was like a poisoned apple. Pretty, tempting, deadly. "I'm not your second option, Zayden. Not your backup brain. Not your emotional support when Bianca gets too busy." His expression darkened. "Oh please," he scoffed. "You think Liam's any better? That loser couldn't even speak in class last year?" I turned slowly. "You know what's funny?" I said, softly. "He might have been invisible to you, but he never lied to me. Never used me. Never humiliated me for sport. That makes him 100 times better than you'll ever be." Zayden's eyes narrowed. "You think people don't talk? They're saying you're using him just to climb higher. That you're pretending to like him for attention." I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. "They said worse in my last life," I whispered. "And I still survived." His confusion flickered, like he sensed something was off, but couldn't place it. Like he was talking to a ghost and didn't know it. I walked away, but that conversation echoed in my mind as I reached home. People were talking. I saw the stares, heard the whispers. Bianca's clique had started a passive-aggressive smear campaign about how I was using my new image to manipulate people. That I changed too fast. That I was pretending. They weren't wrong. I had changed, but I wasn't pretending. I'd simply stopped hiding. Still, their voices dug in deep. The damage of 100 cruel words never really leaves you. That night, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, doubts creeping in. Liam messaged me. "Liam, ignore them. They don't see the hours you work or the strength it takes to stand up again." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Me. Thank you. You always say what I need to hear." He responded almost instantly. "Liam, maybe because I actually see you." That simple sentence silenced the noise. They could talk. They could lie. They could spin their stories. But I wasn't a rumor. I wasn't a character in someone else's play. This was my life, and I was finally writing it myself. The week before the National Innovation Competition felt like a whirlwind. Late nights blurred into early mornings. coding, revising presentations, rehearsing pitches. Liam and I were operating like a well-oiled machine, each thought flowing seamlessly into the next. There were moments when our eyes would meet mid-sentence and we'd smile, silently amazed by how well we worked together. But beneath that current of excitement, I felt the pressure mounting. I knew Zayden and Bianca wouldn't go down without a final play. They weren't just hurt that I'd moved on, they were threatened. Because I wasn't just succeeding, I was winning, and I could feel their desperation growing. It came to a head 3 days before the presentation. I was called into the academic office unexpectedly. The dean, a stern woman with sharp glasses and a sharper tone, sat across from me, holding a thick folder. "There's been an allegation of plagiarism," she said without preamble, "against your joint project with Liam. Someone claims the idea was stolen." The room went silent. Stolen? My hands went cold. "We've received an anonymous report that suggests your APP's framework mirrors a concept previously submitted by another student, Zayden Carr." There it was. Their move. I kept my voice steady. "That's impossible. Our code is original. Liam and I built the interface from scratch." The dean didn't respond immediately. She studied me carefully. "I know your record. You've never cheated. But due diligence requires an investigation. Until it's resolved, your project will be put on hold." The air in my lungs felt heavy, like I was drowning in betrayal. All over again. After the meeting, I went straight to Liam. He was already pulling up files, his jaw set. "They filed it this morning. You stole concept notes from some abandoned pitch Zayden made last semester, something completely different. But if they bend the narrative, it might look similar to ours. Can we prove it's ours?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes. Timestamps, code history, auto saves, everything." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "We're not backing down." My throat tightened. For the first time since I was reborn, I felt it again, the fear that maybe no matter how hard I fought, the past could still ruin me. But then I looked at Liam. Steady, fierce, loyal, and I remembered something. In my last life, when Zayden turned everyone against me, I stood alone. This time, I wasn't alone. We gathered every version of our source files. We documented every change. Liam even pulled up early sketches he'd scribbled in his notebook months ago, ideas we'd never submitted but clearly outlined the APP's development. We built our defense. And we didn't stop there. I submitted my own anonymous report. I exposed Zayden and Bianca's coordinated attacks, the manipulation, the slander, even proof that Bianca had tried to bribe a tech tutor to rewrite code on her behalf. The truth didn't just whisper, it roared. The next day, we were cleared. Our project was reinstated. The dean apologized personally, and Zayden and Bianca were suspended pending investigation. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. Because justice wasn't loud. It was quiet. And in that silence, I finally felt peace. The auditorium was packed. Students, professors, judges all waiting for the final round of the National Innovation Competition. Each group had 10 minutes to present their work, but those 10 minutes could change lives. I stood backstage with Liam, palms slightly sweaty, heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, purpose, pride. "I can't believe we made it," I whispered. He looked at me, soft but firm. "You were never just going to make it. You were always going to lead it." That sentence wrapped around my heart like a warm coat on a stormy day. When our team was called, we stepped onto the stage. The bright lights hit my face, and for the first time in both of my lives, I didn't want to hide in the shadows. I wanted the world to see me. I clicked the remote and our slides appeared. Good morning. I'm Aria Lynn, and this is my teammate Liam Hart. We present to you Lifted, a mobile education solution built for the forgotten. I launched into the story about students from low-income families who couldn't afford private tutors, about how the pandemic had worsened the learning gap, about my own experiences studying under candlelight while others had all the resources. I poured my heart into every sentence, not as a performance, but as a promise. Liam took over halfway through, demonstrating our prototype. The room was completely silent, locked into his quiet confidence. Then I ended it with Lifted. No student gets left behind, not because of money, location, or circumstance. We believe education is not a privilege, it's a right. And it's time technology caught up with justice. We stepped back. Applause, not polite clapping, real, thunderous applause. After the presentations ended, the judges deliberated. Every second felt like a lifetime. I squeezed Liam's hand under the table, not realizing I had until he gently squeezed back. Finally, they returned. The head judge stood at the podium. First place, and the recipient of the National Student Innovation Grant goes to Lifted by Aria Lynn and Liam Hart. My ears rang. My heart soared. We had done it. The moment I walked on that stage to receive our award, I remembered the version of me who once cried in the library over Satan's Betrayal. The girl who thought her worth was tied to someone else's opinion. She was gone now. This girl, this woman, was standing in the spotlight, not because she was chasing love or revenge, but because she finally chose herself. As I held the trophy, the flash of cameras lighting up the stage, I glanced into the crowd. Zayden was there. He wasn't clapping. He was just staring. But it didn't matter anymore, because the version of me who once begged for his attention was now someone he couldn't even reach. I walked off the stage into a new beginning, into a version of my life that belonged solely to me. 2 days after the competition, as the adrenaline began to settle and the real weight of our victory took shape, I received a message. Zayden, can we talk? One last time, please. I stared at the screen. I didn't owe him anything. Not a reply, not a meeting, not even a glance. But sometimes, the final nail in a coffin isn't silence, it's closure. I agreed to meet in a quiet, public CAF, a neutral place. Not because I needed to hear what he had to say, but because I needed to be sure I wouldn't carry the last fragments of this storm into my future. He looked different, tired, the shadows under his eyes deeper than I remembered. He still wore the same smug expression, but it was cracked now, like a porcelain mask finally beginning to shatter. I saw your presentation, he said, stirring his untouched coffee. It was brilliant. Thank you, I said calmly. He looked up. You really did change. No, I corrected him. I just stopped pretending. He nodded slowly, fidgeting with the cup. I messed up. I know that. I used you, and I thought I was being clever. But when I saw you up there owning that stage, creating something that mattered, I realized how small I've always been, and how big you were. I just never saw it. I said nothing. There was no satisfaction in his confession, no thrill in hearing him say what I'd always wanted in my old life. It just felt empty. I miss you, he added, voice cracking slightly. Not just what we had, but who I was when I was with you. I met his eyes. You don't miss me. You miss what I gave you: answers, attention, validation. You miss The girl who made you feel bigger. But I'm not her anymore. And even if I was, I would never choose you again. The silence that followed was long and heavy. He didn't argue. Do you love him? He asked finally. Liam, he nodded. I smiled gently. I don't know where it'll go, but I trust him. He sees me, respects me, and he's never once tried to dim my light. Zayden looked away. That's love, I said. Even if it's not perfect yet, it's real. It's earned, he sighed. I just wanted to say sorry, and for the first time, I believed he meant it. But that didn't change the past. Apology accepted, I said quietly. But it doesn't mean I'll ever forget. He nodded again, slowly, then stood and left. I didn't watch him go, because I had already left that part of my life behind. I pulled out my phone and texted Liam. Me, CAFS quiet. Want to come write the next chapter of Lifted with me? Liam. Always, and just like that, I closed one door and walked confidently through another. The seasons began to change. The cherry blossoms that once framed the campus paths had fallen, replaced by warm golden leaves that crunched underfoot. As I walked to class, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same, because this time, I was living a life I had chosen. With our victory in the competition, Liam and I received more than just recognition. Investors were now reaching out. Professors were offering mentorships. I was no longer the girl no one noticed unless they needed help on an assignment. I was a founder, a visionary, a voice that mattered. And yet, none of it had gone to my head, because I remembered who I used to be. The girl who stayed up all night sobbing quietly while typing Zayden's essays. The girl who kept hoping a little more love, a little more giving, would make her enough. She was gone now, but I carried her lessons in my heart. One evening, Liam and I sat on the university rooftop. Laptops closed, the last rays of sun painting our faces in gold. The city stretched out before us, buzzing with energy and possibility. We've come far, he said, leaning back on his hands. We have, I replied, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Sometimes, I still wake up expecting to be back there, in the middle of my first life, trapped in that same loop of pain. You broke the loop, Arya, he said gently. You didn't just rewrite the ending. You changed the whole book. His words sat with me, deep in my chest, warming parts of me I didn't know were still cold. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't partnered? I asked softly. He turned his head to look at me. All the time. And every time, I realize I probably would still admired you from a distance, never working up the nerve to say more than hi. I laughed. I'm glad we did, I said. Me too. A quiet beat passed between us. Then he reached over, slowly, giving me time to pull away, and laced his fingers with mine. I didn't pull away. And in that simple, wordless moment, we understood something. What we had wasn't about rescuing each other. It was about rising together. The next few weeks passed like a dream. We launched a beta version of our APP. Hundreds of underprivileged students signed up. Feedback poured in, real stories from real lives that were already beginning to change. I'd never felt prouder, not even of the APP, but of who I'd become. Not perfect, not polished, but whole. One evening, as I walked through campus alone, a girl from the year below stopped me. Arya, she asked shyly, can I just say, you really inspire me. Like, I didn't think people like us could succeed until I saw you. I blinked, surprised. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than she could ever know. She smiled, nodded, and hurried off. I stood there for a long time afterward, letting her words sink in. I had spent so much of my old life trying to prove myself to the wrong people. Now, I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was living proof. Graduation day came faster than I expected. The morning was crisp. The air buzzed with anticipation and the low hum of family chatter and camera clicks. The university courtyard was filled with caps, gowns, and bright futures waiting to be unwrapped. I stood among them, my heart full not just of pride, but of peace. In my last life, graduation was bittersweet. I had stood quietly on the sidelines, watching Zayden and Bianca pose for photos, never invited to be in any. I had walked across the stage feeling invisible. This time, my name was called and the crowd cheered. I walked across that stage, my head high, eyes steady. I didn't need anyone to validate me anymore. I had built my identity with my own hands, one broken piece at a time, and reforged it into something unshakable. Liam was waiting at the end of the stairs, holding a bouquet. Not roses, not lilies, just a bunch of wildflowers, messy and colorful. And real. They reminded me of you, he said with a grin. I laughed. Messy, beautiful, and unstoppable. We took a photo together, one that captured a smile I hadn't worn in years. A smile that came from a place deeper than success or love. A smile of freedom. Later, our friends threw a small party for us, nothing fancy, just music, laughter, and the comfort of people who genuinely cared. At one point, I stepped out onto the balcony alone, the city lights sparkling like fallen stars. I thought back to everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the rebirth, the fight, the choice. If I had the chance to go back to the moment I first fell for Zayden, knowing how badly it would all end, would I stop myself? No, because without that pain, I never would have broken. And without breaking, I never would have rebuilt. This life, this second chance, wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving anything. It was about becoming. Liam joined me a few minutes later, slipping his hand into mine without a word. We stood there together, not needing to speak. The silence was no longer heavy with unsaid things. It was light, easy like the space between breaths. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. I blinked. Liam, not a ring, he said quickly, laughing. Not yet. Just something else? I opened the box to find a silver pen inside. On the side, it was engraved, the author of her own story. I choked back tears. It's cheesy, I know, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. It's perfect, I whispered, because that's what I finally was. Not someone's shadow, not someone's tool, not someone's forgotten background character. I was the author now, and this was only the beginning. The days after graduation were a whirlwind. Our APP lifted, officially launched, and the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from students across the country, stories of struggles, hope, and gratitude. But amidst the excitement, Liam and I faced the reality of what came next. We've got investors asking for prototypes, meetings lined up, and a full schedule of interviews, Liam said one evening, scrolling through emails on his phone. This is bigger than we imagined. I smiled, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. We're ready, I said confidently. We dove headfirst into the world of startups, long hours, late nights, countless revisions. There were moments of doubt when exhaustion threatened to break through the momentum, but we held each other up and love. It wasn't perfect, It wasn't a fairy tale. It was in the small things, the shared coffee on rough mornings, the quiet encouragement after a tough pitch, the way our fingers found each other during stressful moments. One night, as we celebrated our first big investor signing, Liam pulled me aside. "Aria," he began, his voice serious but warm, "I want us to build more than just an app. I want us to build a life together." My heart swelled. "Me too," I whispered. "We promised to face every challenge as a team, to keep our dreams intertwined, but also respect each other's individual growth, because this was our story now, not one written by others, but one crafted with intention, love, and resilience." And as I looked out the window at the city lights, hand in hand with Liam, I knew we were ready to face the future together. Months passed, each one filled with milestones, hurdles, and breakthroughs. Lifted had transformed from an idea whispered between two students to a thriving platform that truly changed lives. We received messages from families who couldn't afford tutors but now saw their children excel. Teachers who used our app to reach struggling students. One afternoon, Liam and I sat in our small but buzzing office, the hum of new employees and ringing phones all around us. I glanced over at Liam, who was laughing at something on his screen. "This is real," I whispered to myself. "We did this." He looked up, catching my gaze. "We are doing this," he corrected gently. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't just the success of our app that filled me with joy. It was the journey, the scars healed, the lessons learned, the strength found in vulnerability. I thought about how far I'd come since that fateful exam day, the day I was reborn. And no longer the girl used and discarded, no longer the shadow behind someone else's glory. I was whole. I was fearless. I was me. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Liam took my hand and led me to the rooftop of our office building. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple ring, silver, delicate, yet unbreakable. "Aria," he said, voice steady but filled with emotion, "you're my partner in everything, life, work, love. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as I nodded, words failing me, because this moment was everything. The end of a painful past, the beginning of a beautiful future, and the proof that sometimes second chances aren't just about rewriting the past, they're about creating a life that's better than you ever imagined, together. Thank you for listening to my story. A story about heartbreak, rebirth, and the power of choosing yourself. If you've ever felt used or lost, remember this: your worth is not defined by others. You have the power to rise, to rewrite your story, and to shine on your own terms. Don't let anyone dim your light. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share. And remember, every ending is just the start of a new chapter. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.